You know, it was 34 years ago this time that I was sitting in your seat. And at Rutgers, finishing up mechanical engineering, I don't think I had the opportunity to have a dialogue or hear from some of the business community about leadership. So to your credit, thank you for participating in this class. Hopefully I will add something useful for you to think about as you get ready to embark on your either the balance of your student career here, the final stages of that, or to get out into the business community. So a couple areas I want to touch on. I want to start with leadership and culture and how we think about that at Progress Energy. I'll talk a little bit about my own personal experiences. I'll talk a little bit about the types of things that we value in leaders, and then maybe finish with a little bit of conversation about some thoughts or advice that I might offer to you to consider as you get ready to start your working career. It seems like only yesterday, although it's been 34 years now, that I was sitting in your position. So I will tell you the time passes quickly, and I wish you all the best of luck. On the way in, hopefully each of you received a copy of the culture statement at Progress Energy, and I wanted to start with that. And one of the things that I try to do is think about our business. It's a complicated business, but I try to think about it in simple ways. And we have really a one-page document that we talk about with all of our employees. We have 11,000 in the 3 states we currently operate in and 4,000 here in Florida, to try to simplify how we think about the business and each of our individual roles, because every one of our employees is important. Everyone plays an essential role day in and day out. And if all of that doesn't work together the right way, we're not going to be successful in the things that we're trying to accomplish year in and year out. So we think about three areas in particular. One is the fundamentals, excelling in the fundamentals of our business every day, delivering power in a way that is economical for our customers, is safe, it's reliable, and doing it in a way that our customers understand and appreciate. So the fundamentals, the things that really the majority of our employees do, which is keeping the lights on day in and day out. And then we think about some of the longer term things, some of the strategic things. How are we going to plan for the future? And in a business like ours, we plan in decades. We don't plan in 6 months to a year. Building power generation, which is the biggest component part, and those power sources for the future, that's the most expensive part of our business, and we want to make sure we're being efficient and planning appropriately. And then the third piece is how we do that. And that's really what this culture statement is all about. This is something that is on my desk that I view frequently, and it's on the desk of all of our employees, and we ask them to make sure that they're considering these 8 simple principles when you think about the how you go about things. What are the things that guide you as an individual in conducting your daily work? So let's talk about this a little bit. And really, I'll talk about them in pairs. If you think about the first 2, focus on safety first and act with integrity. These are really 2 fundamental values that guide our daily mission. We're in a business that is hazardous if we're not respectful of electricity and how it's generated and transmitted. So safety is very important to us, and I'm very proud to tell you that we had the best safety record last year in the over 100-year history of our company here in the state of Florida. And we've improved by 70% on our safety record over the last 10 years. So that's something we focus on day in and day out. The next pair is really the high bar that we try to set for ourselves to meet our stakeholders' expectations, to excel in our mission of serving customers, because again, that is our primary daily focus, and to try to be outstanding financial and environmental stewards in our work. We have a very significant environmental footprint in the work that we do, primarily power generation and transmission, our facilities, and we want to be, to the maximum extent, environmentally friendly in making sure that we're carrying out our daily mission. The next pair speaks to how we treat each other as employees. And we focus a lot on diversity and inclusion. And a lot of people think of this as race or religion, but diversity to me is really diversity of our experience. If you think about your own personal experience, it's not really race or creed. It's really think about the things that have influenced you to get to this point in your life. Your family environment, your work environment, your school environment. You will leave here, I'm sure, and think 10 years from now about an individual or individuals here at UCF that will have an impact on your life or on your career. That's all part of the diversity of our experience. And when we bring a number of employees together, it's that collective background and experience and having a conversation and solving problems and working on issues. It's that diversity of thought and experience that creates better solutions. So that's an area that we think about day in and day out. And then the basic fundamental of really treating everyone with respect and honesty and fairness. So these are simple things. And the last two are really about our accountability for success as a company. We hold each other to high standards and we try to be innovative and collaborate on a day-to-day basis. So think about, here's a very simple set of 8 principles that this is the how we go about our work. And if we do this and we have the right goals and business objectives, we can help to be successful. And this culture statement to me paints a picture of a work environment that will drive our success, one that's going to optimize our performance as a company. But the words alone are not going to make the difference. It's really all of our employees embracing this culture statement and thinking about how they're going to conduct their daily business. A lot of this is what we do when people aren't paying attention or aren't watching us. How do we conduct ourselves as individuals, making sure that we're doing things the right way, whether it's here at school or in your work life to come. So that's a little example of how a business like ours, Progress Energy, thinks about the culture and how we want to have our employees think about their daily mission at work. Now I want you to think about, along with me, to think about some of the things. Think about a leader. We're going to talk about leadership today. Think about an individual leader and think about some of the qualities of that leader that come to mind. Why do you envision that individual as being a leader? Anybody want to volunteer one? Yes. Motivated. Okay, good. Others? Yes.
Passionate.
Passionate. Great. Yes, sir.
Confident.
Confident. Yes.
Trustworthy.
Trustworthy. Yes.
Focused.
Focus. Okay. More? Yes.
Well communicated.
Pardon?
Well communicated.
Well communicated.
Competent.
Competent.
Determined.
Determined. Good examples, each and every one of them. So think about the individuals. Think about the people that you see or you hear from, whether in government or business, or you see folks day in and day out at the university here. And those are the kinds of qualities that those individuals possess, and those are the kind of people that you want to follow, a good leader. They're on my list, a lot of the ones that you mentioned. You know, trust in what leaders say and do. If someone tells you something and does something else, that's not going to create an environment of trust. But if you trust someone and you know that they are motivated to do the right thing and to look out for your best interests, that's someone I think you're going to follow as a leader, right? Competence. You have to be competent. I could stand up here before you today and tell you that you know, I want to work at a nuclear power plant and be an operator of a nuclear power plant. I'm not competent to do that job, right? So we have to have a skill or a competence in the environment that we're working in order to make sure that people trust and will follow our lead on that particular area of expertise. Another one people think about is working for the greater good of society. A lot of leaders today not just have an accountability for their day job, but to translate what they do in their work or their business in a way that people feel good about what they're doing for the greater good of society as a whole. There's a lot of examples of that, a lot of negative examples of that. People are less likely to have credibility and be viewed as a leader if the business that they're in or the things that they're doing are not deemed as trustworthy. You know, a recent example, one of the lieutenants for Warren Buffett, you know, is in a little bit of trouble these days because he had some stock that he had purchased right immediately in advance of when that company was acquired by Buffett's company, Berkshire Hathaway. Now, it's probably perfectly legal what he did, but yet the perception, a lot of this is the perception. Is that something that people will have confidence in when someone is, trading in securities and with an appearance that it may be, for personal gain? So decisions that people make in a leadership role as you move up, more and more scrutiny comes to those as they move to higher levels in an organization or in business. And the high standards you have to hold yourself to make sure you retain the public trust and confidence in what folks do. Another one is sharing your values. You look to folks as a leader because you have a personal connection, something that you value. I mean, a lot of you will gravitate towards a work environment where you feel like the leadership or the culture or the values of that particular company match up with yours. A lot of the movement today, for example, towards reliable, clean, renewable type energy, there's a lot of companies moving in that space. Why do people move there? One, it's good to provide more energy sources for the future, but people value things that are going to be friendly to the environment and be done in a way that's going to be positive for our future. So values are important. Someone else mentioned leaders have to drive results. Results matter. If someone's talking to you about their business or enterprise and they're not doing so well, I think that's going to raise some questions about their leadership capability to drive appropriate results. Because in our world, in our business, results do matter. If I stood before you and said we value safety as a company and our safety record was in the lower 25% of our industry peers, I don't think that would drive confidence that we are focused on the right things. In fact, at Progress Energy, we want to be really in all of the key leading indicators in our company. We want to be in the top 25% of all of our peer companies, and we want to be in the top 10% for our safety record in our industry around the United States. So we set very high standards for ourselves, and we try to achieve them each and every year in all of those particular categories. And the last thing I'll mention for leaders is being in touch with individuals' needs and concerns. That's really about an emotional connection. Because what do we want from a leader? We want a leader to think about, you want folks that are leading you or managing you or teaching you to care about what you think. A lot of it is that one-to-one connection. It's hard sometimes in a big group environment, but people want, if you're having a conversation with someone and making eye contact and investing time to understand and listen. That's why we have, 2 ears and 1 mouth. We should listen and talk in proportion to the things that we utilize to do that, right? So people want to know that individuals want to know that you care about their well-being and you care about what's on their mind. So that's another thing that I think we think about when we think about leadership. So I'll just share a little bit on my own personal background. It was interesting, as I was leaving the symposium earlier this morning, I was stopped on the way out by one of the students, and he said, so how do I work down a path to be successful like you were in your job and your current position at Progress Energy? And I'd like to tell you there is no simple answer to that. I have a college freshman at home, and he thinks he's ready to just go jump in the boardroom and be ready to go and start his career. Well, I will tell you, it takes time and effort and patience and a number of different things to be successful. And I will tell you about my own personal experience. I'm one of 8 kids in my family, all boys. I would have had to have a bet on that odds when my parents started out. And we were a family of engineers. My dad was an engineer, so I did fairly well in math and science through high school, so it was just natural that I was going to go to engineering school. I haven't really been a practicing engineer so much in my career, and I'm not sure if I had it to do over again if I would have been an engineer or chosen a different profession, but nonetheless, that was where I landed at. I was at Rutgers back in the 1970s, and when I sat 34 years ago where you're sitting today, I had absolutely no idea what work was about or what my work career would be or what it could be. Absolutely no idea. So those of you that are still puzzled about what the next step is, don't be fearful of that, because you will find your way. I can assure you of that. There's so many different career opportunities out there to think about. And the one thing I will tell you is find one that you enjoy. I started out after I graduated, worked for a company that was based in Ohio. I worked on projects in the southeast, steam generation, small boiler projects, and I did that for about 7 months, constantly traveling day in and day out, and it was not for me. And I made a switch, and that was probably one of the first important decisions I made that will help me be successful in my career. So I realized I was doing something that I was not enjoying, and it was not sustainable. So if you're getting up and going to work every day and you're not happy with what you're doing, it's time to change that situation. First, understand what it is you're not happy about. There may be opportunities with a company to move in a different direction, but make sure you're enjoying what you do. So the break that I got early in my career is I got to work with another company, Foster Wheeler, and I worked on projects, which gave me some exposure to a variety of groups within the company, all aspects, not just simple engineering design, but purchasing and working with third parties, with customers and their consulting engineers. So I got exposure to a lot of different aspects of how a project comes together, which was a very valuable experience for me early in my career. And I got exposure to working with folks at all levels of the organization, from the top to the bottom. So it gave me a good understanding of how things really came together, number one. And number two, it gave me a comfort level. I've often found, I remember, I tell this story when I was going through grammar school. I don't know if you had a similar experience yourself. When I was in the 4th grade, it was like the 6th graders were the coolest guys in the world and the gals in the world. And how could I ever be successful in 6th grade? So you think about how you progress through your life, and you get in that situation and you get yourself there and you realize it's all the same. You're just making your progress as you go along. So it helped me be comfortable with all levels of the organization. And I will tell you that I'm a big believer that while I'm respectful of different levels of the organization, I always view that all of our people are important at our company. Every one of the 4,000 people that come to work at our company here in Florida are important. And I try to make them understand the importance of what they do, and to do that to the best of their ability, and the accumulation of all of that effort is going to make us a successful company. So everybody has an important role to do. So I just celebrated my 25th year. I started on St. Patrick's Day in 1986 with what was then Florida Power, is now Progress Energy. And it's been a wonderful experience for me. I primarily have been in the St. Pete, Tampa Bay area for the majority of my career. We are, some of you may know, we're in the process of a merger with Duke Energy right now, who's headquartered in Charlotte. And when we're done, we'll be the largest utility company in the United States, which is very exciting. But I've really enjoyed my career. And I will tell you, I have, one of the things I've been very fortunate, and if you listen to some of my background and experience, I have had the opportunity to experience a lot of variety of different jobs throughout my career. And that's the one thing I would tell you to think about as you get into your own work career, especially when you're younger, is to try some different things. I'm a big believer in on-the-job training. When you actually do something as opposed to observe something, you're going to learn a lot more, and you're going to understand what it's like to walk in somebody else's shoes, especially in a big company. If you join a big company or a small company, to try a diversity of experience. And I've been very fortunate to have that opportunity throughout my career with Progress. The other thing is patience. I can tell you that there have been a handful of times throughout my career where I felt like there was an opportunity that I was ready for that for one reason or another did not work out. And it's very easy to get disappointed or disenchanted and throw the towel in and move in a different direction. And I resisted the urge to do that, even though I may have thought personally that it was the right opportunity for me and someone else got chosen. That was the disappointing part. But be patient, especially in today's world. More and more companies are flattening their organization. There's less and less opportunities for management in the way the world works today. So that's that diversity of things that you should try, and then hopefully those doors are going to open. The other thing I'll tell you is loyalty matters a lot. People want to understand that you believe in what the company is doing, that you're loyal to the mission, and that you express that in a way through your work and your attitude and your behavior, that you really care deeply about the company's success. Flexibility is another one. Another part of the choices that you will make in your working career is how flexible you want to be about location, work-life balance, the type of work that you want to do. So the more flexible you are in that, the more doors that will open for you. But I'm also very respectful and admire a lot of the folks that work for our company are balancing many, many things, not only in their work life, but in their personal life. So I'm very respectful of that. So those are choices that are very individual for you. So where you want to live, what type of work that you want to do, how many hours you're willing to put in a given day, all of those things will influence your career path. So flexibility is something to think about. Continuous learning is another one. And again, as I said earlier, I am a big believer in OJT. I am not a good online course study and then I'm going to apply that in the real world. I have had, I will tell you, when you observe something from a distance, you form certain impressions that may be entirely different than the impression you will form if you make a change and work alongside somebody that's doing a job that's different than yours. So I would tell you that continuing to learn about the business, a lot of what has helped me be successful is learning firsthand. I will tell you about 3 or 4 years ago, we had an opening at our federal public affairs group in Washington, D.C. And one of the folks in our Raleigh office asked if I would help out with that. And it was a hardship. I literally had to get on a plane every day for close to 2 years to go back and forth. But I will tell you the experience for me personally to understand and to work in that environment and try to understand how government works, especially at the federal level, which a lot of us might argue it doesn't work so well, but to get a sense of that and to see that firsthand has been very helpful to me to understand, take some of the mystery out of how things really happen and how things work at both the state and the federal level. So that was a valuable experience, but yet there was a personal sacrifice on my part to be in traveling, and I will tell you that that's not the fun part. The other advice I would give you is have a questioning but respectful attitude. You know, one of the things that I try to do if I'm sitting in a meeting with a number of our employees or peers and we're having a conversation about an issue, and someone who might be less familiar with that issue than perhaps you are, instead of saying, you know, that's a stupid question or why don't you think that, I tend to try to ask it in the form of a question, have you considered this or have you considered that? So you may be very knowledgeable. One of the things that is dangerous in our business, and I tell our employees this a lot as well, is don't flatter yourself that people go home and think about how electricity is made day in and day out. The average person knows that they pay a power bill, but they know very little about what it takes to run our business. So people have questions, help them to understand, and help them to understand in a language that is something that they can absorb and learn from. The other thing I'm a big believer in is the difference between authority versus influence. If you think about that, would you rather have someone encourage you to do something, or would you rather have someone order you to do something? As you get in positions of authority and higher authority, you have more capability to tell people what to do. But if you tell people what to do, they may do it, but it doesn't mean that they're really invested in it, right? As opposed to influence and encourage and to tell people why what they do is important. So I'm a big believer in the influence side of things and not the authority side of things. You know, because all of our folks, as I said earlier, that come to work, all of them have an important role. We all have different accountabilities and responsibilities depending on where we sit in a particular organization. But no one is more important than another, especially as people and as individuals. So think about the influence. Think about how you like to be treated. And I'm sure none of you like to be told what to do, but rather you like to be encouraged to continue to do the things that you think are right. And a lot of that is what I call unlocking human potential. So all of us have things inside of us, some capabilities, So what can I do as a leader to help people reach their best potential? How do I help unlock that human potential? One of the things we do in business is every year we have a conversation with each of our employees about their annual performance. And one of the areas that we stress, that I stress in that, is individual personal development. And so the conversation that I have with the folks that work directly for me, and this sort of hopefully trickles throughout our organization, every year I come in and I say, what is it that you would like to do that you feel is going to make you a better employee for the company? And because I say, when we have this conversation a year from now, if you don't feel that you are a better employee or a better individual or contributing more to the company, then I have failed as a leader and part of my responsibility to you as an employee. So we like to sit down and write examples of some things. It could be a course, it could be working on a team, it could be a special project, it could be a lot of things that are very simple, but just some new experience that when folks come together and we talk about that a year later, people feel like they're in a better place than what they were when we had that initial conversation. So that's a little bit about my personal experience. So now I'll give you a couple little of my thoughts about the future, and then I'd be happy to have some conversation, some questions that you may have that are on your mind that maybe I haven't addressed. So a couple points of advice. There's really only one person that's responsible for your success, and that's you. No one is going to hand you anything in life. So you have to decide what it is that you want, what it is that you're willing to do to achieve that. But I would encourage you to have those conversations. You get in a work environment, you're working for somebody, don't assume that they know what you want. Tell them what you want. Tell them in a constructive way. I'm interested in this, I'm interested in that. How can you help me to move along that way in my particular career? One of the things we talked about earlier, be passionate about what you do. I don't enjoy being around negative people, personally. All of you probably have examples of people that you know who are negative. They are just a drain of energy. I am very much a glass half full, optimistic type person. Because I will tell you, regardless of what your individual situation is, if you look for it, you will find things that you think are better, and you will find things that you know are worse. So it's be passionate, enjoy what you're doing, and understand that where you are is what your situation is, and deal with that. Have a plan. It's hard to figure out how to get from point A to point B unless you have a specific plan. It doesn't have to be complicated. It could be very simple. 6 months from now, I'm going to do these steps. I want to be here. Have goals. Have an individual plan. I want to work on a special project. I want to do this in 2 years or 5 years. Think about what works for you, what particular time frames work for you. The other advice I give you is embrace change. Think about, you all know this better than I do, the speed of change and the continuum of change. Think about technological changes. I remember the first computer. I remember the first calculator. When I was in college at Rutgers University, they had just introduced, we were using slide rules back then, okay? They had just introduced the first calculator, Texas Instruments. I think it cost like $300 back then. And I was fortunate enough to find one. Of course, the physics professor immediately figured out that calculators weren't going to give you an advantage, because he told us that if any of your answers are not a round number, it's the wrong answer. So, but think about the speed of technological change and the telecommunications technology and those things today. Change is going to continue, and the folks that stay in touch with that predict that it's going to change at even a faster rate than what we've seen probably over the last 10 years. So understand things are going to change and embrace that change. Learn your business. If you're going to work in a particular industry, learn as much about it as you can. There's all different opportunities to do that, whether it's courses or projects or reading. I like to read about individuals myself personally. I like mystery novels a little bit, but when I read other things, I like to read about individuals. I like to read about sports figures and other individuals, whether it be, presidents or other leaders, and I like to learn from their own personal experience, which is applicable to help me do my job better. But learn about your business. And then be positive. As I said, I gravitate towards people that have a positive attitude and are interested in success. I gravitate away from people that are negative and will drain energy from me or work groups that they're around. And then the last thing I would tell you is, following through on your commitments. I'm a big believer. If I say something to a customer or an employee or a business leader in our community, I feel very obligated to follow through on that. So I'm very reluctant to say things that I'm not going to do. Because if you tell someone, well, I'm going to meet you here at this time, or I'm going to do this for you, and you don't do that, that's not going to do a whole lot for your credibility as an individual. And those are simple things. Just understand what you're making a commitment to do, and once you make a commitment, follow through on that commitment. And then people will gain your confidence and trust and understand how you're going to conduct yourself. So really, just to finish up, I guess the sum of all this is be true to yourself and what you want to do. I will tell you, most of you will start your working career and you might change jobs 3 or 4 times in the first 5 years. That won't be unusual. That's more of a trend these days. But ultimately, you will land somewhere and you will find your niche and carry out and do the things that we talked about here this morning. Some of you may be comfortable. I mean, some people are more comfortable than others being in a leadership position. It's not for everyone. Some people like leading other people. Some people are very comfortable being a team member. And obviously we need both to be successful in business. So really, be true to yourself. Find what you're comfortable with. I will tell you, it will probably take you 5 to 10 years of your working career to find a niche that you feel comfortable with. And at that point, you'll be ready to move. So I wish you great success. You're at a very important time in your life, near the end of your scholastic career. And I know you all will look forward to great success in your work life as well. So I'm going to stop talking at this point, and I hope I will have provoked some thought and maybe entertain some questions that you may have about any of the stuff that I covered, or if there's something I didn't cover that you'd like to talk about, I'd be happy to entertain that as well.
To get results when some people just don't see the glass half full and say no to every possibility?
That's a very appropriate question. My style is to give people feedback. I think if you're in a leadership position and you see things that need to be changed, then if you don't provide that feedback to employees, which is not an easy thing to do. A lot of us like feedback, mostly when it's positive, right? So negative feedback, or it's really constructive criticism. And I try to turn it into a positive in the sense that, either encourage people to think differently about things, maybe provide them a different opportunity, or really get to the heart of it and to say, look, if you're at a situation or a point right now where you're so unhappy with what you're doing, it's time to change and do something different. And I will tell you, when I left Foster Wheeler and went to what was then Florida Power, I was a little bit in that situation myself. I had reached a point in my career where I really wasn't happy doing what I was doing. I didn't outwardly express that necessarily, but I knew, for me personally, it was time to make a change. And I made a change, and I've been very fortunate ever since then to stay with one company. But it's really, you have to address it. You can't just let it sit there and linger and fester, because it'll just get worse.
How do you convince or try to open up a dialogue between your team members to give them feedback on your performance as a leader?
We have a variety of different ways to do that. Actually, my team is not very shy about giving me feedback. I'll tell you that. I get it constantly, and I get it from all different directions, which I welcome. I will tell you examples. I speak a lot, as you can imagine, in my position, and typically I travel with one of the folks from our communications group, and I get instantaneous feedback on whether I've done a good job or not after that session. But in the work environment, we work a lot as a team, and I'll give you an example. When I took my new role a couple of years ago, I solicited feedback. Number one, we have tools. We have online tools like 360-degree feedback tools that I encourage all of our folks to use. I use it myself, where people can either, it's largely anonymous, so they might survey the folks that work for them, the peers that they interact with, and then the folks that they work for, to provide them constructive feedback on a handful of different dimensions. You know, work competence, communication skills, job performance, all those types of things. And we use that feedback to translate that into specific developmental opportunities for individuals. Because a lot of people think about performance management, they think of it in a negative sense. I think of it in a positive sense. I mean, the majority of the folks that come to work at our company every day are very interested in doing a good job and moving ahead with their career. So how can we help them understand what their strengths are, but also how can we help them strengthen areas where they have opportunities for improvement? So we have different ways and tools to do that, but I will tell you, I am very comfortable, and I would like to think the folks that work with me and for me are very comfortable in providing feedback to me on a pretty routine basis. And I encourage that.
Your relations with those in the private sector versus those with individuals in the federal government?
We are an industry, as you can imagine, that's very heavily regulated and heavily influenced by the political process. So we obviously have a lot of interaction with regulatory agencies and government officials, both at the state and the federal level. And then we interact with a lot of contractors that do work for us. We interact with a lot of big businesses that we are the power supplier to. A lot of it is common, in my opinion, from the standpoint of a lot of what I talked about as an individual leader is how you project yourself as a company. You know, you can take advantage of a situation and maybe that'll help you economically as a business in the short term, but that will only happen once. So your trust and your relationship with individuals is not a sprint, it's a marathon. So I'm a big believer. We do a lot of work in Tallahassee. We go before the Public Service Commission on a routine basis on a variety of different issues. And if I went there with the expectation that we were going to get the result that we wanted every time, you know, that would be a bad expectation. So people want to understand that some of the things that I talked about, that you're consistent, that you're true to your word, that you're working for your customers in the right way, day in and day out, and that you're not trying to take advantage of the system, because you are going to be working with these folks for a long period of time. So it's not the sort of thing. So I think our approach is we want people to think that we're being straightforward with them, that we're being honest with them, that we're conducting ourselves in a way that makes sense, and that they're being treated fairly. You know, if you have a contract situation, for example, with a vendor, and it's a vendor that you're going to work with over the long term, not the best solution when you get into a disagreement is not to bring in the lawyers and fight it out. It might be just to resolve it in a way knowing that there's always going to be give and take. I'm a big believer in the give and take. There are times when we might do things in the public arena or the private arena that we don't feel is necessary for us to do, but we will do it knowing that it will probably come back in the form of compromise on the other side at the appropriate time. So I think a lot of it is really just people to understand who we are and what they see is what they get and how we conduct our business. And that's the way we try to approach things, you know, sort of every day.
Much like practical field engineering experience, my question is, when did you realize you wanted to be more on the leadership management side of that, and how did you make that transition?
Well, I joke with people that I got through Rutgers more on my agility than my ability as a mechanical engineer. But I'll tell you, early in my career, the first job that I had, I was out in the field working on boiler equipment and controls and that sort of thing, and you know, it clearly wasn't the thing for me. I'm more of a, I guess I gravitated more towards, there's a certain discipline with engineering that you have to, it's very rigid and you have to do things the right way or you're going to run into problems. And I'm probably a little less structured than that as an individual, so I sort of knew that that was not the right path for me. But at that point, I didn't really know. I mean, I didn't really sit there and say, well, I want to be, you know, in this particular job 10 years from now. I didn't really have that. What really helped me, I think what helped shape my experience was the next job that I had. Here I was 2 years out of school. I was dealing with, utility companies on projects. I was dealing with their architect engineers at the highest levels in their organization. I was dealing with the top management in our company, and I was dealing across a wide spectrum of issues, from how a boiler was designed. I wasn't doing it myself, but how that all came together. So I got a sense of how things sort of fit together, and that's a lot of what your schoolwork teaches you. It teaches you how to think about things and solve problems. So I've always utilized that background and experience from my college career. And so as I got into that, that's something that I enjoyed. And I think at that point I realized that I was more interested in sort of the project management. One of the things that I did after that is I actually was a project engineer on a big power plant project. It's actually the Seminole Electric coal-fired power plant in Palatka here in the state of Florida. And I made a decision, instead of continuing in the project management, I made a conscious decision to actually go in the field, back in the field, and I worked on the startup of that project. So I got an opportunity to see in the real world what I was designing or concepting in the office environment. So that was a very valuable experience for me personally. After that, I got into some sales activity, and then from there I went to Florida Power, Progress Energy, and a lot of what I did was on the customer service side of that business. And I will tell you, with a big company like ours, there is a wide diversity of things to do, from design engineering to field work to project management to energy efficiency, renewable energy. I mean, it's really, those of you that are a little bit unsure, one of the things you might want to try is a bigger company, because I'll tell you, there's a lot of different doors that open that you can try, if you're willing to, put in that effort early in your career. So I would say probably in that second job, it opened my eyes a lot to how business worked, and it said to me that was something that I would enjoy more, that project management aspect of it. But and then managing people is a whole different animal, and I will tell you, I stubbed my toe a number of times in learning that. That's something you just sort of learn as you go. And I was fortunate early in my career at Florida Power then to have small groups of people that helped me learn sort of how to deal with the management leadership part of what's helped me be successful throughout my career. So there's no magic formula, and there's no easy way to get from point A to point B. So you're just learning throughout your career, and hopefully you're building on that year in and year out. That it's going to put you in a position to be successful long term.
I was hoping that you could share some of your experiences as far as mentors you've had and how you go about choosing
mentors. We do this in our company, and I am a big believer in this. I have had the opportunity to have a mentor and to mentor other folks, and a lot of it is just helping people sort of demystify things that are the unknown. How did you get to this stage in your career? Matter of fact, I'm having lunch with a person a week from now who asked me if I would just share my own personal experiences with her to help her think about things in her own career. So I would strongly encourage you to consider that wherever you go to work. And it could be folks that you work with, it could be folks in the community, but to just pick people's brain. There's no charge for that, and I've been fortunate. There was a couple of individuals throughout my work career who I developed a friendship with, and not a formal mentor-mentee relationship, but someone who I could sit and talk to, who I viewed as someone who had a lot of the characteristics that we talked about here this morning. So you have to make your own judgment about those individuals and who you would feel comfortable sharing your own personal experiences with. But that's a great way to help learn. And just to sit there and have lunch once a month with someone and say, well, I'm thinking about this or I'm thinking about that. And I think you will find, almost without exception, that people are willing to share their own personal experiences. I know you had an opportunity to hear from some great folks throughout this series here today. But, people in those positions love to talk, and they love to talk about themselves a lot. I try not to do that too much, but they're willing to share their own experiences, and that is good and free advice, and I would strongly encourage you to take care of that. We do that a lot, as I said, in our company, and definitely a good tool to use to help you get ahead.
who are your role models? You mentioned that you like to read books about sports figures and
Yeah.
so on. Who are the people that you look up to as great leaders?
I get that question a lot. I don't have like a magic answer. I'll give you one example. How many of you are baseball fans? Rays? Any of you follow the Rays? Not this year, but they're off to a pretty lousy start. I'll tell you a guy who after the ball game's over, I leave the TV on because I want to hear what he has to say, and that's Joe Maddon, who's the coach of the Rays. Now here's a guy who finally got his opportunity late in life to be a head coach of a baseball team. Worked in the Angels organization for 20-some years, did a lot of the OJT, learned all about the business, so to speak, of baseball. And if you follow him or you listen to him, and if you haven't, I'd encourage you to listen to him. You never hear a negative word come out of his mouth. He's always finding the positive in something. And a lot of what he talks about as a leader is following the process. So if you follow the right process, if you do the things that you need to do to be successful, you won't always get the result. So when he talks about it in baseball terms, he talks about following the process. Do the right things at bat, do the right things in the field, have the right attitude, carry forward. Are they going to win every game? No. But if they follow the right process and they practice the right way and they have the right culture in their clubhouse, and he is another one who doesn't tolerate sort of negative attitude very well. And I think you saw when the new ownership of that team came in, a lot of the negative influences in the clubhouse left. So a lot of it is creating the right culture, creating the right environment, and positive for success. You know, I look at individuals like that. And, you know, you look at, I like to follow coaches in sports in particular. If you look at folks that have gone to different locations and they've been successful in those locations, and yet folks before them have not been successful. You've seen, you've seen different colleges, for example, that have had success in a particular sport, whether it be football or basketball or whatever, and then they go through a dry period and someone else comes in new and the success returns. A lot of that's leadership. It's having a system, it's doing the right things, it's creating the right culture. So those are the kinds of people that I tend to look at. I mean, you look at folks that are good communicators, regardless of your politics. I'll tell you, so 2 presidents, one Republican, one Democrat, you look at a person like Ronald Reagan, or you look at a person like Bill Clinton. 2 great communicators. You can question different things about their individual politics or their style, whatever, but they're very good communicators. They're very engaged in how they talk with folks. But you know, we have leaders throughout our organization that I admire. You know, I mean, one of the things, you know, I've had some of my own personal experience where I've had hardship at home with my own family, so I'm very sensitive as I see our employees day in and day out. You really never know what the folks that you're walking past on the street are carrying around with them. You think about I think about our employees constantly, whether they're dealing with an aging parent, whether they're dealing with a sick child, whether they're dealing with an unsettled marriage, all those types of things. People don't disconnect those things when they come to work. So all of those folks, you know, are leading in their own way. You know, trying to manage their life and their career, and trying to do it in a constructive way.
Engineers are typically not known for their communication skills.
You got the diplomatic part down. I like that. Yeah.
Where did you learn that soft skill?
A lot of it's been in most recent time, the last couple of years. And I will tell you, I am a terrible speech reader. You know, we have a communications group in our company, and when I come to situations like this, I'm very much, give me some thoughts or notes and I'll talk in my own language, sort of thing. But you know, when you see the president talk with a teleprompter, or you see people that read a speech, I am just awful at that. So part of it is knowing what environment you like to do conversations in, right? But I will tell you, this is not something that I've been that skilled. I mean, I've had a lot more opportunities to do it. So again, it's just a practice thing and the routine thing. So if you have that desire, practice it. Seek out an opportunity. You know, go There's classes for that you can take. There's opportunities for you to go to speak to a local group or a student group or whatever. And I just encourage you to do that. And don't be fearful that you're not going to be the best at it, you know, when you start out. But you learned it. I mean, there are certain individual little things, little tips that people can share with you that you can learn online, or you can learn, you read a communications book or whatever. But a lot of it is just really being conversational and being yourself. Part of it's preparation. You know, a lot of times you'll, you know, one of the things that is a pet peeve for me is you get somebody that stands up and say, well, even if they're, he's like, I just learned that I had to do this a couple hours ago because my boss couldn't make it or whatever. What's the first impression you're going to form when somebody tells you that? Well, maybe I'm not going to listen that well because this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. So even if that's true, don't say it, okay? So just, you know, just try to be comfortable and relax, and you know, part of it is just time and experience. You know, we were at the symposium, and I was sort of making the observation that, you know, some of the young engineers, I mean, they probably haven't been in that situation before, and some are more comfortable than others, obviously, in how they deliver information. But simple works better for me. So find what style works for you, you know, and then just, you know, practice it. And as you practice, you'll get more comfortable, and you'll do better as you go along. I guarantee you that.